it's because he doesn't want to play or anything. Okay, go and get some chicken. Okay. No. Hey, come here.
It's my chicken. It's my chicken.
Nobody gets it now.
Okay, now I really want it spot after. Yeah, maybe we should put it on the counter.
Yeah, we're gonna
Sit.
put this.
I knew the chicken was gonna be a problem. I was telling Cutie.
You mean very good.
All right, wait. Now Hasan has to steal, right?
I know, she's got the gun.
All right, everyone's put their gifts up.
What do you mean? No, I want her to bite her. That's the point. She needs to learn. See? See? That's what I want her to do. Now I'm starting to get short with her. She's like, yeah, she's annoyed. That is social correction.
If you are currently experiencing a behavioral issue of any kind, feel free to email me, as I do offer virtual coaching. And if you would like, you can go to my Facebook page and you can see all the reviews that I've had from previous clients. My name is Kevin. I've been working with dogs for 16 years. I currently help dog owners resolve behavioral issues that have developed in their dogs. I make the distinction on my channel that dog training is exclusively skill-based, while behavioral issues are largely socially related. So the focus of this channel is canine social dynamics and the relationship dynamic between dog and human. When I engage in resolving behavioral issues in dogs, I do not use treats, I do not use toys, I don't use play. My focus is on what's happening on a social level between dog and dog owner. The clips that are now circulating of Hasan's dogs fighting at a social gathering, as well as an older clip of him putting both of his dogs in a playpen in an attempt to socialize them, has sparked some discussion regarding whether or not the way Hasan went about socializing his dogs did in fact lead up to the fight that took place, it looked like, at a Christmas party. I managed to find a longer clip of this incident, and I think it's a really good opportunity to not only teach people how to prevent these things from happening, but also teach people why these things happen, but also to clear up some misinformation in regards to dogs, dominance, and the social hardwiring of canines. This can be a very complicated subject to dive into and flesh out completely, so we're just going to keep it as simple as possible here. And if you're interested in understanding dog aggression on a deeper level, then I highly recommend checking out part 1 of my video series, The Parallels Between the Rise in Aggressive Behavior Between Dogs and Kids. It's important to understand that dogs are social creatures and dogs do form social hierarchies. We are very similar in that regard, and I love to use the workplace as an analogy to illustrate this point. When you go to work, you are operating within a dominance hierarchy. You are an employee, you have a boss, your boss has a boss, or maybe you are a boss, but you still have a boss, and up the chain of command it goes. But this is also why I make the distinction in my work that training is skill-based and behavioral issues are socially related. This is an important distinction to make because dog training is rooted in learning theory. If I have a dog with a behavioral issue, I don't want to engage in something that would be associated with building skills if the issue is of a social nature. When you get a new job and they train you on how to do that job, you are receiving training to acquire the skills necessary to perform the job proficiently. But you being able to perform those skills well has nothing to do with how you perceive your boss, how you perceive your coworkers, or how you perceive the job itself. You could be extremely good at your job, but break the rules of the workplace, talk back to your boss, maybe sometimes they do deserve it, but you know what I'm saying, or are rude and disrespectful to your coworkers. During this whole situation, we've heard numerous times how Kaya's received professional training and how extremely well trained she is. Now granted, I don't know if this fight took place before that training started or in the midst of it. My point being, you could have a very well trained dog, but that does not mean that that dog perceives you correctly, and it doesn't mean the dog respects you. Police canines are also dogs that receive high levels of training, and yet there are many instances that I could show you where those dogs bit their handlers. Maybe you're watching and you've taken your dog to the Petco or PetSmart training classes, and yet maybe your dog performs well with obedience, sit, stay, come, what have you, but you put a bowl of food down and your dog growls at you or tries to bite you. The whole point of establishing a hierarchy is to avoid conflict as you move forward through life, but also as a means to quickly diffuse conflict should it arise. When there are people in positions of authority, it makes it very easy to diffuse conflict should it be necessary. Despite what many people believe and what organizations such as AVSAB or the American College of Veterinary Behaviorists would like you to believe, dogs do in fact possess dominant traits. But it's important to understand that this exists in a spectrum. You have dogs that possess very little dominant traits to dogs that are extremely dominant. And if we look at the definition of what that word means, dominant simply means power and influence over others. The most dominant member of the group is the one who is in a position of authority. In this case, the more dominant-minded dogs tend to have more authority than the weaker-minded dogs. It's the dogs who exhibit the strongest personalities, the strongest mindsets. These are the dogs who have no issue asserting themselves and challenging other members in the group. More dominant-minded dogs tend to engage in disciplinary measures more so than others. And so this is how the pecking order is formed. The weaker and more submissive-minded dogs eventually will submit to the stronger-minded and more assertive dogs, and within that group of more assertive and confident dogs, you may have some fighting and battling taking place to establish who is in fact the strongest of that group. But this can also be a contextual thing. Some dogs have a very dominant mindset no matter what they're doing and no matter what situation they're in. But some dogs only demonstrate dominant tendencies in regards to food, toys, territory, or people. One of the biggest misconceptions that I see thrown around in the dog training world is the claim that the individual Dr. David Meck, who coined the term alpha theory, took that back and also said that dominance didn't exist, and his original assertions about alpha theory were then discredited. But this is only a half-truth.
The term alpha isn't really accurate when describing most of the leaders of wolf packs because the term implies that the wolves fought and competed strongly to get to the top of the pack. In actuality, the way they get there is merely by mating with a member of the opposite sex, producing a bunch of offspring, which are the rest of the pack then, and becoming the natural leaders that way, just like with a pair of humans producing a family. Instead of using the term alpha for a wolf, instead of saying alpha male or alpha female, scientists now tend to call wolves like that the breeding male and the breeding female. And, or you can call them the mother wolf and the father wolf. There's really nothing wrong with that. Those are much better and more accurate terms than the term alpha. Actually, you know, I'm very much to blame for the term alpha being used with wolves. I published a book in 1970 that now has over 110,000 copies in circulation, and in that I labeled the top wolf in the pack the alpha. And I did that because at that time that's all that science knew. But we've learned a lot. That book was published in 1970, and in the 35 years since that time, we've learned an awful lot. One of the things we've learned is that the term alpha is really incorrect when applied to most wolf pack leaders. It's appropriate to use the term alpha in an artificial pack where you know, you might put many wolves from different assemblages together, unrelated wolves and that kind of thing. Then they would form a pecking order or a dominance hierarchy, and you could call the top animal at that point the alpha. But that rarely happens in the wild, if ever. And so, you know, that would be one case where you could use it. Another case is where you have what we call a complex pack, or a pack with multiple breeders. In Yellowstone, for example, there have been some packs that have had as many as 3 breeding females. And in that case, you can call the top-ranking female, who would usually be the mother, you can call that animal the alpha female. But you know, looked at in the perspective of wolf packs in general around the world and all, that rarely happens.
The dominant wolf in the pack is he just mated with another wolf, and they had offspring, and so they were automatically, just like human parents, right, they were dominant to the rest of the pack. But that didn't mean they fought to get to the top or anything. They just mated and produced their own pups. And so that's when I published the paper indicating that you know, use of the term alpha was pretty outdated and we should change that.
And you know, this kind of open a whole big can of worms, even in the whole society. Forget about the animal kingdom, but really even in social sciences, you know, like that whole idea of dominance, and it became a very, very controversial, and everybody's trying to kind of pull the rug their way. And as a dog trainer, one of the big problems for us, because of that statement that you did. And I know that you tried to retract it so many times, and not to retract it, but to explain exactly what you mean, because it really was taken out of context to where certain groups of even researchers and dog trainers and people as a group started to think.
They misunderstood. I didn't say there was no such thing as dominance.
Right.
But a lot of the dog people thought that's what I was saying.
In fact, a 2014 article published by Science Magazine went over a study that was conducted at the University of Veterinary Medicine in Vienna, in which they conducted an experiment involving lab-raised wolves and lab-raised dogs. I'll go over this study in greater detail in a standalone video, but the conclusion that they came to in the study was that wolves tend to be more cooperative while dogs do form strict linear dominance hierarchies. In the article, the ethologist Ray Purnell had even stated, he said, "It's wonderful work, but it's not what the dog training community wants to hear. You can't say the word dominance around them. Does dominance exist as a phenomenon in dogs? The answer is clearly yes," Serpell says, although he notes that there are breed differences. Other researchers, for example, have shown that when in packs, poodles and Labrador retrievers are more aggressive than are Malamutes and German Shepherds. The individuals who conducted this study had also said that they suspect that the relationship between dogs and humans is also hierarchical, with humans as top dogs rather than cooperative as in wolf packs. The notion of dog-human cooperation needs to be reconsidered, Range said, as well as the hypothesis that domestication enhanced dogs' cooperative abilities. Instead, our ancestors bred dogs for obedience and dependency. It's not about having a common goal, Range said. It's about being with us, but without conflict. We tell them something and they obey. This idea is a core part of what I teach my clients and what I'm here to educate the public about. The idea of cooperation is not a 50-50 pie-in-the-sky endeavor as people would like to believe. For instance, when you go to work, your boss has more power and authority than you do, and his or her boss has more power and authority than they do, and up the chain it goes. There is no such thing as equality. You are not equal to your dog, and your dog is not equal to you. Dominance most definitely plays a role in the human-dog relationship. We are meant to be an authority figure to our dogs. Now, in relation to this whole situation with Hasan, if he has two dogs in the home fighting, then this would suggest that they are battling for control over something. Most conflicts between dogs are a battle for control. In regards to objects or resources such as food, treats, toys, territory, or even people, if dogs are battling for those things, then that would suggest that one or both of them believe that they have some level of ownership or control over those things, and they are willing to fight each other for it. In regard to objects or resources such as food, toys, territory such as couches or beds, or even people, the affection and attention that dogs receive from people can also be something they will compete for. But if one or both of those dogs believe that they have some level of entitlement in regards to those things, meaning that they believe they have ownership over the food or the toys, over the couch, the bed, or the humans, then this will cause them to fight over these things. Again, the fights are a battle for control over these things. Now, they stated in the video that they said that they had believed it was because the chicken was presented, and this may be true. However, the chicken wasn't close enough, I believe, for either one of them to fight over it. However, even being in proximity to the chicken could have caused them to fight. There were other people suggesting that so many people being in this room could have caused the fight because of stress or something of that nature, and it's possible that this played a role. However, it usually is the case that when you have that many people in a home, dogs will typically compete for the attention of those people. But it is true that if you have that many people in the home and those people are introducing a high level of excitement to the situation, then this can also lead to conflict between dogs as well. If Hasan had taken the time to establish ownership over everything in the home in terms of the toys, the food, whatever it may be that could lead the dogs to fight, if you have dogs that are a bit more territorial in nature, as I would suspect a Tibetan Mastiff may be, and again, breed isn't everything, it depends on the mentality that lives within the dog, and these boundaries are not established, then that could in fact lead to a fight. This is a great little demonstration as to why breed is not nearly as important as people want to convince you that it is. All of these dogs understand the message that I'm sending to them, which is why once I claim the food, I'm able to walk out the front door and none of them touch it. A canine's social hardwiring comes first above everything. Breed is a secondary thing that you must look at when dealing with behavior problems. All behavioral problems must be addressed at a social social level. There are 4 dogs in this home, 2 of which are the same breed, 3 breeds total, and 2 of them are mutts. Yet all of the dogs respond to me the same way, because I'm claiming the food in a way that any dog would do. This is instinctual to them. This makes sense to them. And when you approach things from a social understanding of canines, you can work through things like resource guarding very quickly. I should be able to walk away. I should be able to walk out the front door and then not touch any of that.
I'm ready.
You ready?
Showing aggression, or was mom trying to communicate?
What a stupid fucking question. Is the dog communicating or being aggressive? Both. The way that dogs communicate with one another is through aggression. This is the idiocracy that we see online.
So this is how I engage in a power struggle with an insecure dog who engages in what is known as resource guarding. Now this dog is interesting because she was actually homeless and this family took her in. And based on what I could assess from this dog, my best guess is that she simply had to fight for whatever she got in the situation that she was in, because she's actually a pretty submissive girl. And this appears to be more of a learned behavior rather than a natural inclination for her to want to control things. So you'll see the more that I assert this boundary and claim the food as mine, she begins to understand what it is that's happening. And there's a moment where she becomes fearful and is shaking, but she begins to open up and relax a little bit the more control I take. And you'll see that the more we go through this process, the less she wants to engage in this intense mouthing to get her way. Here, and then now she finally sits. I take more ground. She finally gives in and lays down. I'm able to back away. She then gives me her attention, which is her signal to me that she no longer wishes to challenge me, and then I can give her the food that she has now earned. And as we see in the clip of him where he had both of them in the playpen, there were toys in there with them and possibly even some food related objects they could chew that were just thrown in there haphazardly, which could lead the dogs to fight over them because there's nothing being communicated on Hasan's part that would lead them to believe that he owns those things and that they should not battle for them. If those boundaries are not established by the human, which is supposed to be the authority figure in the equation, then dogs will in fact compete for these things. But it's also important to point out that when you have 2 dogs in the same room together and you have objects that they may compete over, there are certain warning signs that you have to watch out for so that you can intervene at the correct moment to prevent the fight from happening in the first place. You see, Hasan was clearly distracted by the situation and his live stream, that he wasn't paying attention to what the dogs were doing. And I can almost guarantee you that one or both of the dogs were communicating something that would suggest that a fight was about to take place. If he had been paying more attention to what the dogs were doing, he could have in fact intervened and this fight would have never taken place. Now you can see that this fight was really more of a really intense scuffle, as it doesn't appear that either dog was hurt. And scuffles like this do happen. They're not abnormal. However, they are largely preventable. Now, when a dog truly understands that you control the food and they do not, this is what it will look like. And by the way, do not feed your dogs this dried shit. Okay, it's terrible for them. Not my dog, not my food. Anyway, you see how his attention's on me, not the food. You should be able to walk away from this bowl. Now, I would go outside, but he'll freak out if I go outside. He's a work in progress. But you should be able to walk out the front door and him not touch the food. So for this exercise, I'll just walk away from the bowl. And he should not touch that food, because he respects that it's not his. Wait. One thing I love to do when going through these particular things with dogs is upping the ante. So what if I took some delicious pizza and put it on the ground and then told him to back off the pizza, right? And then I did the same thing I did with his bowl of food. Would he attack the pizza? Or would he respect that it's mine? What do you think? Think he'll eat it? The answer is no. That is what respect looks like. Man, that pizza smells good. But if they understand it's mine, will either one of them try to eat it if I walk away? I'm sure you've seen my other videos where I do this, but it's usually one dog. Now let's see if I can do it with two. When dogs understand who controls what, they will not challenge you over food. They will not try to take the food from you. They will not disrespect you for food. They will not demand the food from you. And they sure as hell won't try to eat it when you walk away. Respect is earned, not given.